Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to call the meeting of the Richmond City Council to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Any discussion, additions, any discrepancies there? Okay, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Madam Clerk, agenda additions and deletions?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There is one agenda deletion, and that's on page CNCL 7A, under the DPP item 15 section. The development permit, DP 18-821292, cannot be considered at this time as the relevant zoning bylaw amendment requires final adoption first. That's item 2A.
With that withdrawal, may I have a motion on the agenda? Moved and seconded. Again, discussion. All those in favor, opposed, carried. There are no delegations for tonight's meeting, so we can go straight into the consent agenda, where we have the receipt of committee minutes, the Capstan State integration strategy, the recommendation to award the contract for development of conceptual designs, the 2021 Richmond B City Canada certification application. We have one land use application for first reading, goes to public hearing on February 22nd. That's 8720, 8740 Rosemary Avenue, rezoning from RS1E to RS2B. Then there's a referral response for the review of office stratification regulations. We've got two 2022 proposed initiatives for Traffic Safety Advisory Committee and the Richmond Active Transportation Committee. Then we have the water use restriction amendment. That's off the consent agenda. And the corporate electric vehicle charging station installation scope increase. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? Second. Moved and seconded. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of things to highlight. A good agenda tonight, and thanks staff for all the reports that we have on them. I just would like staff, if I could, on the Capstan Station integration strategy and what we've done over the years, and to staff to verify that that station has been built by money that's come out of Richmond, and the fact that we were able to, I'm surprised to see we've given them 32 million. I thought the original amount was about 26 million, but we've collected enough money to see that it is paid for, and it will be for the benefit of Richmond residents. So I want to thank staff for that. There's money in the, if you wish, left over in the bank for the continual maintenance of it. I do have a question. I'm very pleased to support the Richmond B certification application. A tremendous report, and I want to thank you very much for it. And in terms of the analysis on 59, talking about pollinators, paramount for a stable and thriving natural environment to help improve physical and mental health of residents, for bees, butterflies, etc. The report is excellent. I appreciate it. My question to staff, if I may, Your Worship, is there are a number of local residents that have beehives in their backyards or front yards or wherever. Do we know, or do we have a roster of those that are, I have one right next door to me, 3251 Williams, and 2 hives there. But I'm wondering, do we, my object to ask is, I'd like to see people and encourage people to do this, especially those that have the appropriate floral and gardening on it. So, does staff know, do we have a roster? Or?
Yeah, through Your Worship, to Councillor McNulty, I don't know that we have a roster of specific beehives in the city. I do see my colleague Alex Nicky jumping in there. He may have another answer to that, so I'll let him answer.
Good evening. The Richmond Bee Association is a very active local bee club in Richmond, and it includes members from throughout the Lower Mainland. As a beekeeper myself in Vancouver, we are required and are asked every couple of years to register our hives and indicate how many hives we have with the province, with the provincial apiarist. So there is a voluntary registration through the province for beehives.
Well, thank you very much. On our 59 with education, maybe we can put that out to people to join that association. We're happy to see the bees and the apple trees and the various part of the garden and backyard, and especially lavender and the roses that we have. So I think we encourage people to do it, but also register to, it will only make our whole effort in this case much stronger. Anyhow, I thank you for the report. I thought it was a good report. I appreciated what you did on that. I just have a couple of questions, two other questions, Your Worship, on the traffic. I appreciated. I'm not on Public Works, so the answers were probably given there. With regard to around school zones, I'd love to see the mapping around the school zones and knowing what is that. Is there a specific school drop-off area for children to be dropped off there? And I guess my question on the advisory, and this is the same with the Transportation Committee with the bike lanes and what have you, are the PACs discussing these kinds of things? I guess go to the councillors that are on school board liaison to encourage the PACs to get involved and come forward. I got a request the other day from Manoa Steve's, not from the school, but for the 6 homes kitty corner across the street from wanting speed bumps. And I said, the first thing I said to them, have you talked to the school across the street if speeding is an issue? Or is it just in front of your place? And so I guess my point here would be to try to involve the PACs and if we're going to do mapping of each school, to see whether the issues are common for each of the schools on that. So I'm hoping maybe a school board liaison people can bring it up and ask. I don't know what the communication is like from the PAC or through you to the PAC or to the school board liaison to the PACs, but it'd be neat to get them, because I had no idea who to contact on the PAC. And just the last quick comment, very happy to speak in the Parkland on Rosemary. We're getting two bedroom secondary suites in each of those. I guess my question to staff, and I'm going to bring it up at planning, are these suites self-contained and do they have an exterior entrance? And it's something we might look at when we're doing it. An internal entrance sometimes is not the same. And if we want to see these kinds of dwellings rented out to other people, maybe other than family or opportunity to have that as a real true mortgage helper, then maybe it's something we as a planning committee at the time may consider. And my last comment, I'm supporting the water. We have come down 1 million cubic liters in what, year and a half. The water restrictions are good.
Oh, we're not, that's off the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll talk about it
We'll
then.
get to that.
Okay, I'm going to support everything else on the agenda, Your Worship. Thank you very much, but I do want to make a comment in the water. Thank you.
Okay, just before we go to the next speaker, I just want to remind on the Capstan Station, originally we were going to be paying 29 million, that was the agreement. And then we entered into a further agreement so we could get a down escalator and a second entrance to the place. So that increased it, and our share of that increase was the $3 million.
Well, thank you for that clarification.
All right, Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda tonight and just want to speak to a few. Number 7, the Capstan Station Integration Strategy Recommendation to Award Contract for Development of Conceptual Designs. This report recommends that the Capstan Station Integration Development of Conceptual Design, estimated at $482,000, be awarded to Dialogue Design. It was really interesting to read the work that this company has been involved with across Canada and the United States, some very high-profile projects. So I'm really looking forward to the process, which will involve multi-stakeholders to develop the connectivity, wayfinding, safety, convenience, identify landmarks, and programming to integrate the key elements of the area to create a cohesive and vibrant urban community. Now, I do have a question through you, Your Worship, to staff, and the report does allude to this, that there's that they will be consulting with pending development applications. You know, the area is fairly new and up and coming. There's a lot of construction going on, and we know that many of the units are not going to be ready for occupancy for a couple of years. So how will this be reflected in the public consultation phase? I mean, you know, there'll be new residents coming in after the Capstan station. So how do we reflect this new community?
Through your worship, Councillor McPhail, we really have to work with what we have there when we go through the process, but as we move forward with the implementation over time, I'm certain that we'll receive a lot of information from people, because this implementation part of it that comes well after this will take a number of years as we do collect the money. So I think that there will be lots of opportunities to talk to the new residents through the implementation phase.
Well, that's really good. That's really good to hear. Thanks for that. Number 8, the 2021 Richmond Bee City Canada certification application. And as Councillor McNulty mentioned, staff are seeking endorsement to prepare and submit an application to Pollinator Partnership Canada for Richmond to become designated as a bee city. And thank you to staff for a look at the application, which outlines all the initiatives that the city is currently engaged in that protects and promotes pollinators and pollinator habitat. And I remember a couple of years ago when the city was involved with the David Suzuki Foundation and the Butterfly Project, and the community learned about what types of plants encourage pollinator forage and habitat. And I had lost several plants the year before, so I planted several lavender and rudbeckia and some other plants, and my garden has just been amazing, full of bees and butterflies since then. So I think it's that kind of information about plants and the public awareness of the benefits of the butterflies and the bees, which is especially key. So looking forward to the results of the application. Number 11, the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee proposed 2022 initiatives. Thank you to staff for the report, and to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee for all the work that they do. From the report, you can see how busy 2021 was for them, and 2022 looks to be just about at the same pace. And glad to see this report is going to Council Board Liaison, as much of the work continues to be around school zone traffic safety. And I'm especially interested in the work that is happening around the school zone traffic safety. Over the last couple of years, we've had some issues come forward, mostly about traffic, you know, speeding and the amount of cars in and around school zones. So a question through you, Your Worship, to staff. What is the timeline for the review of the mapped inventory of elementary and secondary schools? I understand that some was done last year and that they will be continuing this year. So will we be getting a report in? So what is the timeline for a report coming back to us on, say, some proposed work to be done to alleviate some of the congestion or suggestions?
Through your worship, Councillor McPhail, I think the mapping is all completed, and now we're in an analysis phase, and we'll be bringing it forward to the various stakeholder groups as part of that. So we're hoping to come back with a roundup of some solutions and potentially a program to improve these school approaches and roadways and things like that sometime later this year, like in the summertime or in late summer.
All right, well, that's really good. Thanks for that. And number 13, the corporate electric vehicle charging station installation scope increase. And this is a really good news story. The city had applied for a $495,000 grant through Natural Resources Canada in 2020 and was initially turned down. And then it was reapproved or resubmitted, and we were approved in August of 2021 for $420,000. And this will allow the city to add 15 charging ports, 12 level 2 and 3 level 3 for corporate fleet services through the fleet electrical charging infrastructure installations and the Worksyard electrical service upgrade and EV infrastructure. And I just have a question through you, Your Worship. With the addition of these new charging stations, where are we in our plan for the corporate fleet? You know, we keep adding electric vehicles every year, so I'm sure we're in lockstep with adding charging stations. So where do we see our plan now? This is a big bonus for our plan.
Through Your Worship to Councillor McPhail, yes, we are moving as aggressively as we can with respect to bringing electric vehicles on our fleet. As Council may recall, there was a pledge that was adopted by Council, so we're very mindful of that every time we are purchasing electric vehicles. We have approximately 80 vehicles in our fleet that are either electric or hybrid or some sort of alternative fuel, so we're consistently looking for innovative ways to do things, and we will be also producing a new Green Fleet Action Plan strategy to bring back to Council as well.
Well, good news. Thanks very much. And that's it for me, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda. I have a few comments and actually a couple of questions as well to staff. So in order, pleased to be making progress with the Capstan Way and the design and what's coming next. And I'm sure working with Dialogue Design, many public stakeholder groups and individuals will continue to express the need for public washroom facilities and bike infrastructure at that station, among other things, but those are the ones I've heard of in highest demand. Item number 8, the Richmond Bee City Canada certification application. I'm all for this. I've been a beekeeper myself for almost 10 years. In that time, probably stung over 100 times, but that's okay. I'm not allergic. And I'm also very inspired by the work that goes back way further than that, such as the Richmond Nature Park keeping a hive on display where young kids can look for minutes up to an hour with interest looking for the queen bee, and also just amazed at how hard bees work. And also to consider that this is not just about the honeybees that we get our great honey treat from, but bumblebees. That's something that I learned from my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, how to live and embrace bumblebees on your property. And then also just kind of in the rising trend supporting mason bees and how easy it is to put those houses up and attract those bees. So all in support of this certification application. I'm really pleased. We have so many great projects that align with it. I do see we have some policies in line. I do see some shortfalls, so where I think we can continue to improve upon habitat and biodiversity support. So continue to bring some of those items forward. Also, we have the Environmental Enhancement Grant Program, and hopefully some of those projects will continue to get on board for promoting pollinator habitat. Item number 9, I did attend the Planning Committee meeting where that was discussed. I just have a quick question for staff because I read the minutes, and just to be clear, we're going right now from a 2 duplex unit dwelling with 2 secondary suites, and we're going to 2 single units with 2 secondary suites. So does that mean we're going from 4 to 4 or from 6 to 4? Just if you could clarify that. Thanks.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wolf, it means essentially you're going from 4 to 4. It's 2 single families with 2 secondary suites in both.
Great. Appreciate that clarification on that. Your Worship, just a few more comments on the referral response is item number 10 on the office stratification. Again, I heard the discussion on that. Again, my question to staff here, again, this was that Planning Committee meeting, so I don't have the full scope on it. But what I see here is two questions, I guess. One is we're recommending no further restrictions. I know there was the option of the restrictions or no restrictions. There was no amendment to have like some or like a combination. That's maybe a trial of some. Did staff have any comment on that? And also in relation to it, it says here that part 2 that it would be reported back in 2 years. But if we revisit the OCP before that, would this not be embedded in there? And if so, could we offer some more options on regulations at that time.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I guess to start with the first question, currently there is a policy right now that does restrict, I guess, a large strata in exchange for density bonusing. It was a new policy that was introduced in 2019. And at that point, if someone wanted to take advantage of a density bonus, that there would be restrictions then to the size of the strata lot. At that time, council or planning committee asked if further office stratification restrictions could be considered. So we went ahead and did some consultation on that matter. And in the interim, a pandemic hit us and obviously had quite an impact on the office market. So the end result was that we haven't had enough time to see if this incentive policy is really working and doing what it should do. And also the 2-year window will hopefully give us time to get through the pandemic and have the office market rebound and see if there is a need to impose any further strata restrictions. With respect to the OCP review, if it's timely to bring it something forward sooner, we can do that. It doesn't have to be necessarily part of the OCP review.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Through your worship to staff, my final comments are on item 11 and 12. And I did note in the minutes that was attached from the Public Works Committee meeting, it wasn't mentioned in detail, so I thought I'd mention it here because I know there's many comments I've heard from the public around the snow removal techniques and strategy and priority areas. But there was discussion at committee where there's an existing referral that I believe the date was March. Staff could correct me if I'm wrong on that. But snow removal, like the overall strategy of it, is coming back either early Q2, I think, or maybe Q3. And it would include related to traffic safety issues and active transportation issues like bike lanes. But my comment, which I did get direction from staff, and I did clarify in the email later, that both of these staff committees will independently look at snow removal as related to traffic safety or related to active transportation, as in addition to the Public Works team looking at assessing their own work and priority plans as in the past. So I think having extra eyes with different specialties looking into it will aid in overall better success and helping to just, even if it's another meter on the side of the roadway that we deem as a priority in the city, that extra meter can go to protecting users who only commute by bike along those faster routes. And in close, and then just item number 13, definitely in support of expanding our scope and utilizing the funds that we found available. So thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Steves. Harold?
Thanks. I'm just going to speak on one issue, and that's the Bee City application. I think that's fantastic. We should apply for that. We are keepers of bees, and the bees are keepers of us at our farm. And I find that we're having both domestic bees and wild bees. It's rather interesting because the domestic bees don't get up as early in the spring. We've got about 30, 35 varieties of apples and pears and plums, and some of them bloom very early in the spring. And as long as you've got a good crop of wild bees, they get pollinated. The other interesting thing about it is that people should, one really important thing I think that saved the bumblebees and some of the other bee varieties is when we banned cosmetic pesticides in 2009. I suggested then, and I agree with Bill McNulty, that there should be more beehives and bees kept in the city, because we still have a problem with the farms using some of the pesticides under the the Right to Farm Act. And it's much safer for bees in hives in the urban areas where there's no herbicides and pesticides being used. And the final thing is I think that at our place, because of some of the things we've done in the past, when people were complaining about a lack of bumblebees, we found we had lots of bumblebees. And so people should watch their yards. A lot of the bees like to live in the ground. Unfortunately, I destroyed a beehive last year. They were in our compost heap. I dug in, and the bees all left. I don't know if they went someplace else or not, but watch where you're digging. They like to get under the fence around your yard, and because you got long grass and the lawnmower can't get them, so they'll be in a bit of long grass under your wooden fence and things like that. And so I think it's important that people should be aware that the wild bees, we even have some, at one time we had them living in rows on the shingles on the roof. And so I think it's important that people realize that the wild bees are equally important to the domestic bees, especially when they get up earlier in the spring, and that they have some unusual places to have their hives. So great report, and we're looking forward to seeing more bee work in Richmond.
Interesting, thank you. Councillor Al.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm going to support everything on the consent agenda, but I just want to comment on 2 items. To follow up on item number 8, the Bee City certification application. Yeah, I'm very supportive of this application, and I think that we should be proud of ourselves. As contained in the staff report, we have accomplished a lot of things in the past years. And I remember that some years ago, farmers complained that they do not have enough bees in our city, and it affects their plantation. But in the last 2 years, I think we heard more from them saying that the bees have come back. And this has also been my personal experience. I have a fruit tree in my house, and in the last 4 or 5 years, there was no fruits at all. And in 2021, last summer, we got the fruits back. And actually, we did nothing differently than the previous years. So we believe that it was the bees who help us to bring back those fruits. And I think the application will also increase the awareness of the public about the importance of having bees in our city. And I noticed that because of the media coverage, people are still already talking about honey bees and things like that in our city. So I have 2 questions to staff. Number 1, do we have any commercialized bee farms? I don't know whether this is the right term, but do we have any commercialized bee farms in our city? And secondly, how can we promote household keeping of bees? I mean, I was told that there, in some cities there's a rent hive or adopt a hive program. So, I mean, how can we promote household keeping of bees in the city? So 2 questions, commercialized it and household.
Yeah, to Your Worship, the Councillor Al, I'm not aware of any commercialized beehive areas in the city. I will ask my colleague, Mr. Kernicki, who's a beehive keeper himself, to jump in if I'm incorrect. But I will just add that is one of the objectives of the program moving forward is to understand more effectively who is keeping bees and where bees have been identified around the community, so we can gather and collect a database of that, so we have an understanding of what needs to be managed and how it could be managed in the community moving forward.
Yeah, sorry.
I just only wanted to add that I think a key way of encouraging beekeeping is simply education, and when people realize that the importance in the food system, the role that bees play, they get more curious, and like I did 10, 12 years ago, like Councillor Wolf, I just started getting into it. And also, I would further reiterate what I said earlier, is that the Richmond Bee Association is highly accessible. They meet at the Richmond Nature Park once a month, and when they're very encouraging. The first meeting I went there, they welcomed me with open arms, and they have mentorship programs where if you're a novice and it's your first year, you can kind of sign up with a big sister or big brother, and they help you through. But again, I'll reiterate education and then by extension, curiosity.
Yes, I think the application itself has opened up an opportunity for us to promote beekeeping in our city. And I think perhaps you can promote beekeeping as we promote community garden in the city. And to be honest, I'd be interested to have a beehive in my backyard as well. So this is very good news. And the other thing I want to comment on is item number 13, the corporate electric vehicle charging stations installation. And I think, as being mentioned by my colleague Linda, that this is a good news story. And I think it's, if not because of the grants that we eventually got approved, probably, you know, we will have those 15 new charging stations to be delayed for many years. So I'm happy that the city has always been a leader in this area, and we have a policy of replacing 10% of all our fleets into zero emission vehicles each year. So I think this new funding help us to go a long way. So thank you to staff for their efforts to make this happen. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll be supporting all the items on the consent agenda, but I just want to mention two quick comments. And again, about the Bee City, it might seem like a funny thing for the public for us to spend so much time on, but it is so crucially important. And I'll just say, in addition to the other comments, I was talking to a farmer today and did confirm that, yeah, they will be importing a large number of bees from Alberta later on when it warms up a bit to aid in their farming endeavors. And the only other one I'll make is a comment about the corporate vehicle charging stations. A lot has been said already with the 15 charging ports, but I just want to say and emphasize and compliment staff for kind of the dogged pursuit of grants, because not just for this, but for other issues as well, it goes a long way towards helping the city achieve its goals. So I think Councillor McPhail mentioned this one was denied earlier on. Staff kept with it. They get the grant, and it aids in what we're doing in terms of sustainability in our green fleet. So thank you for sticking with it and keeping your finger on the pulse of what the feds are offering in terms of grants. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so with that, okay, Councillor Day.
Very much, yeah. I'll be supporting everything on the consent agenda. Item number 3, the Capstone Station. You know, we talk a lot about this, what this is about. It's $482,000 to a consultation group, and what they'll be doing is going out to the public and getting community-led initiatives for landscape design, wayfinding, and, you know, activation in the future. And the great news is, while construction started in 2021, this Capstone Station will be completed in 2023. So that is wonderful news, and it'll certainly be a real bonus to the neighborhood. Of course, the bees, everyone's been talking about that. I had a question of staff. I was there at the Lutheran Church on number 40, just north of Granville, to open up and cut the ribbon for their pollinator garden. And it seems to me that community groups like that are already doing something, we should reach out to them to maybe connect them with the bee association that meets in the nature park. And I wondered if staff had any plans to reach out to places such as the Lutheran Church.
Your Worship, Council today, we certainly would. Now that we know that they're there, we do also have programs such as the Nectar Trail that we actively pursue with participants such as churches and schools and things like that. Certainly the properties that we do know of, we do reach out to and work with and provide resources on. So absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, maybe this will get in the newspaper and people will hear about it, and then they'll connect us instead of us having to try to find them. Item number 9 is 8720 Rosemary, and basically we're tearing down or allowing a duplex to be torn down so that 2 big houses can be built. Each one will have a 2-bedroom suite. Unfortunately, in this situation, we will go from 4 affordable renting units to 2. Well, maybe not so affordable, but 2 brand new 2-bedroom units. This proposal isn't perfect. I struggled with it, but I'm going to vote for it because I think it's better than some of the other ones that we've seen. Item number 10 is the review of the office stratification regulations. It's kind of a complicated issue, but we were looking at not allowing stratification of large new office buildings because we want to attract the Googles and the large companies to Richmond. And so we thought, well, let's consider putting in limits to stratification. But this just isn't the time to do it. It's become abundantly clear that status quo is the best decision on this issue of stratification of offices, because a lot of offices are sitting empty because of COVID, and who knows what's going to happen after we get out of COVID, because people are working more and more from home, and so the future could bring changes to that. But right now, status quo is the way to go. And I was super pleased about the vehicle charging center. I think we can't have enough electric cars in Richmond. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting everything on tonight's consent agenda. Not to belabor the point, the B thing. I was noticing that there's a town in the UK that requires B bricks, and there's, I don't know if this can even be seen, probably not, because I've got, anyway, they're requiring B bricks to be built into many buildings. Now, I understand this might be a gimmicky thing, perhaps, but it just shows that there's sort of a variety of ways to be a beekeeper. And so I'm hopeful that staff can actually get that information and tie it into our nectar trail on the website so that people can get the links to find how they might find the Beekeeper Association in Richmond, get in touch with them. There are different ways to be a beekeeper, and that doesn't mean you have to have this giant hive. There's different levels of it. Just like if you were to have a bat box in your property, there's different levels, I think, of how you might support the environment. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was number 10, the review of office stratification. And the reason we started looking at that in the first place was because we were Amazon was talking about coming to Vancouver, Richmond possibly, and one of the issues, or Microsoft, some of these big companies, they want to be near a SkyTrain station, they want to be near transit, they want to be where things are fun and exciting. And there were no large tracts of office space. And so this came about as us trying to help support the industry to create more office space with big spaces in Richmond. So developers were able to have more density if they were to build those large office spaces. And the market obviously changes as we go, and so, and that's why we had this come forward after 2 years to see how things were progressing, what's happening. I think we want it to come back again. It's coming back again in 2 years, so we can stay on top of the situation and really understand what's going on, so we can support our business community and the businesses that are happening. Certainly, we want a range of different businesses here in Richmond, and making sure that we've got different types of spaces for our businesses to rent or buy is very important, I think, here in Richmond. So, thank you.
Okay. All right, with that on the consent agenda, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. That brings us to the one item that's been taken off the consent agenda, which comes from the Public Works and Transportation Committee. So I'll go to Councillor Au, who is the chair of that committee, to introduce it.
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to move the motion and then I will speak to it. So the motion is that each of the following bylaws be introduced and given first, second, and third readings. A, Water Use Restriction Bylaw number 7784, Amendment Bylaw number 10329. B, Municipal Ticket Information Authorization Bylaw number 7321, Amendment Bylaw number 10337, and C, Notice of Bylaw Violation Dispute Adjudication Bylaw number 8122, Amendment Bylaw number 10338. So moved.
So that's moved and it's seconded? Seconded. Go ahead.
So, Your Worship, I just want to point out that the recommended changes being originated from the changes made by Metro Vancouver earlier last year, in October 2021. And because they've made changes to the Drinking Water Conservation Plan, the WCP, to reduce lawn watering to 1 day a week during stage 1 restrictions, and to ban lawn watering during stage 2 restrictions. And these initiatives were being made by Metro Vancouver to reduce peak water demands in order to allow for deferral of elimination of costly infrastructure upgrades. So because of those changes, the city's water use restriction bylaws number 7784 has to change in order to align with the Metro Vancouver's amended DWCP. And included in the changes are that lawn watering is reduced to 1 day a week during stage 1, and also prohibit lawn watering during stage 2 restrictions. Also included in the change is the increase of maximum prosecution fine from $10,000 to, $10,000 to $50,000. And this is part of the change. If the amendments are being adopted, stage 1 watering restrictions will take place on May 1st, 2022, and staff will develop and implement a comprehensive communication strategy prior to May 2022.
Oh, all right. We've got some other speakers. We'll go to Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I didn't support this at committee. And just very quickly, we all realize water conservation is very important to the region and to all of us. And Richmond has been very successful in accomplishing that. We've decreased our water usage despite our population going up, which would be even more significant if you measured it per capita. And I think the key to water conservation is education and awareness, and also the metering program, which we are now moving into multifamily residences. So regionally, my understanding is not all cities are at the same level that we are at, and I think from a metro point of view, that is what I would encourage to have happen, is to get everybody actually metered, and I think that would have a very significant impact in terms of water conservation. So my two issues with this are, first of all, stage 1 is simply an arbitrary set of dates, May 1st to October 15th, 5.5 months, which is quite a long period of time actually, but it's not actually related to anything that's actually happening in those months. You could have the wettest year happening and it would still go into stage 1. Having a really wet year would make watering lawns, for instance, a bit of a moot point, but still, it's not connected to anything that is actually happening. So it's just May 1st to October 15th for stage 1. Stage 2, 3, and 4, I have no issues with. But to change stage 1, for instance, from watering lawns in a typical year from 2 days a week, which I find very reasonable and a good restriction to have it limited at 2 days, to changing it to 1 day a week, I don't find as necessary. I don't really accept the argument that that is going to save us in terms of any infrastructure costs. I think metering everybody in the region would have much more of an impact. So I don't support the further reduction to 1 day in stage 1 from 2 days, because it's disconnected to actually what's happening in terms of how much rain we're receiving, for instance. The second issue I have with this is that increasing the fine from $10,000, which is a maximum, which we never really do, to $50,000, which is a higher maximum, which we are even less likely to ever do, isn't necessary. I understand from staff that the typical fines are more in the $100 range than they are in the $1,000 range, and that actually most of our enforcement or action is in the way of education and warning people. And so my point on this one is, when you're talking about fines and punishment, I think we have to be really careful to keep it real. And a $50,000 fine for a watering violation is, quite frankly, not realistic in my opinion. And I don't think we'd ever go that route. We haven't even come anywhere close to $10,000. So in terms of deterrent, I think $10,000 is very significant and high enough for your average person to actually get the point that, yeah, it's a serious issue and I want to follow the law. And kind of the last couple of points I'll make on this is, laws and penalties and fines have to be realistic so that they are seen as legitimate by the people that may have to pay them. Nobody would see a $50,000 fine or anything near approaching that as fair, as realistic, or as legitimate. And you run the risk of delegitimizing your process if you make punishments and fines that are too high. I think that education and awareness, and occasionally with a persistent, person who's violating it with intent, you can give a fine to. But once that approaches $1,000 or $2,000, your average person is going to get the message. And in fact, I don't believe that's even happened. So I'm just saying $10,000 is plenty high for a maximum. The fact that the Offences Act allows us to go to $50,000, fine. That doesn't mean you have to do it. I supported it for the trees, but trees have an intrinsic value and are tied to property values, which are quite high. So it's a bit of a different issue. For watering, $10,000 is plenty high enough for a maximum, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
You, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I want to make a few comments, but also I want to ask staff a couple of questions. I'll be supporting this particular process that Public Works Committee has come out. It is a Metro Vancouver plan too, but I guess I look at it a little differently, that it is a precious resource and it's critical during the climate change that we show some leadership in, and I have no problem with reducing 1 day per week. The grass will still be green even with 1 day per week unless you have 40-degree temperatures, and brown grass is beautiful too. We talked earlier about bees. Well, let's keep the foliage to increase our bee population green, and that, I agree with the education, because I think sometimes we take it for granted with water, but just because Richmond is 99.9% pure, and our men and women have done a great job in bringing water into our community, there are many countries, and as you know yourself, your worship as a Rotarian, how much money we've put into the world to allow people to get water close by within a 5-mile trek, and build wells throughout the world, where 90% of the world doesn't have good, clean drinking water. And much of Canada has hard water, and they've got to put pills into them to doing it. So, we're talking about watering lawns. I'm talking about consumption. And there's nothing wrong with us. I think last year it was 34 million cubic liters. We're down to, I think, 32. As Councillor Hobbs says, the increase in population, and yet we're dropping. That shows people are being responsible and leadership being shown by the community. So I think it's important that we do this. I don't know where the 50,000 came from. To the chair or to staff, is that in the scriptures of Metro Vancouver, or to you, your worship? Does Metro Vancouver levy $50,000 fines? Is it in their bailiwick? Because I know we only had a certain limit.
I doubt that they ever levy fines of that nature either. It's just, but just because you have the power to do it doesn't mean you're going to.
No, right. I guess committee had discussed it and I wasn't there, so I'm not going to move an amendment, whatever. The other question I had, though, the interesting thing is on page GP 130, there's special for new lawns. Okay, I can see it to get a lawn started, but being treated for European Schiefer beetles. We got Schiefer beetles. Do I get to water my lawn 2 days a week so that I can have my nematodes go in there and get them?
I believe that if you're treating your lawn with nematodes or whatever, if you don't water it, they don't work.
No, I know they die, but they cost quite a bit of money to bring nematodes in. And to me, that's the only, we've been very successful with, quote, the nematodes and the Schiefer beetle. The nematodes like them. Okay, all right, that's in there, and I think it covers. It's a good report, Your Worship, and I'll be supporting the whole work. So I thank staff for it. I think it brings the policy, and I'm hoping the policy on 147 will go up on the website, so that people will get Metro Vancouver's role in utilizing the water resource.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much to staff.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting this. I think it's a pretty important thing to make sure that we're using our water judiciously. And I think this is also a good reminder to people who go away for, say, a month at a time, that they're in communication with their neighbors, so that if they've set their irrigation system to go off a number of times a week or whatever it is, their neighbor can go and fix it. And the same is true when you go away in the wintertime. Somebody's going to look after and make sure there's removing the snow from in front of your house so that people can walk on the sidewalk. I think it's all part of being neighbors, that you help look after each other, that we're not wasting water. We don't want to see a heat dome happen and you watering your garden. We also don't want to have to shut down our water parks for little kids because some people left their irrigation running for weeks at a time while they didn't need to, or while they weren't allowed to. I think it's reasonable, and hopefully this will really encourage people to, talk to their neighbors, be friends with each other, support each other, to look after each other's yards and to look after our precious resource. Now, one question for staff. It says that even in stage 3 that our water parks are allowed to operate if they have user-activated switches. Do all of our water parks in Richmond have user-activated switches? Or do we have any that don't have any?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, I'll defer that question to Mr. Todd Cruz.
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, I believe 2 of them do. I would have to check if they all do specifically and get back to you.
Okay, because I'd love to make sure that all of our water parks have the ability to switch off, because I know a couple years ago when we had to shut down some of our water parks, it was hot. The kids were outside, they wanted to play, and they couldn't play in the water park because they were closed. But it was hot, they needed to cool off, they needed to be outside, and they needed a safe, fun, useful thing to do. So, if staff can look into that and maybe report back to us, that'd be great. And I think, people also need to consider different options for their lawns. If you're out in your backyard and your kids are playing, yes, you want a lawn. If for your front yard, maybe you don't need a lawn. Maybe you need some different option that makes more sense, that you have things growing, it's not necessarily a lawn, and that doesn't just suck up a ton of water for no particular reason. And so, I think that's an opportunity for us here too in Richmond, is to come up with different ideas that are still going to be pleasant to look at, but not necessarily using up all of our drinking water. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Steves.
Thanks. I just want to start off where Councillor Liu left off. I think she's absolutely correct. You don't have to have manicured lawns. And Councillor McNulty was correct as well. Brown is beautiful. I think people got to get across the idea that maybe we should deal with our lawns differently. We've got some beautiful front yards along Steveston Highway when I go walking up and down the street with roses and flowers and everything else replacing the grass. And some people just, not that many, but hopefully more in the future, simply will not water the lawn at all. It goes brown in the summer, and then when the rains come, it goes green again, and we shouldn't worry about it. Another thing you can do is let the grass grow just a little bit longer. It's good for bees that are living in the ground, but also if it's a little bit longer, the grass grows greener. And what we've done, we've planted white clover seed all across our lawn. The clover plants are creeping rooted. They grow very low to the ground. And when the lawn grasses go brown, the lawn is still green all summer long, and you get little white flowers for a while during the summer until you mow them off. So there's a lot of different ways of keeping the lawn without the need of water at all. And I think that's really what we should be aiming for, because we're looking at a huge population increase in Metro Vancouver, and it's going to cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to build new facilities in the North Shore Mountains. So anything we can do to save the water and save from raising taxes to provide more water, the better. And that includes convincing some of our fellow communities to put in meters as well. We haven't been too successful with some of them, and it's about time that they follow suit. And because metering certainly does cut down on the amount of water people use. Great report, and I look forward to seeing great improvements.
All right, thanks. From my point of view, I'm the chair of the Water Committee at Metro Vancouver, so I think that this is really an important initiative. I mean, and I can't emphasize enough the comments that have been made with which I agree about the water metering. We have invested millions of dollars, and for single family in the ICI, we are pretty much there for 100% water metering, but we've still got a long way to go in terms of the ICI. We're only the multifamily complexes, we're only halfway there. But we are getting there. We're spending millions of dollars at it. I think that is critically important. And I wish some of you could be with me at the committee meetings at Metro Vancouver when we talk about water metering, and you hear some of the excuses that people come up with as to why it doesn't work for their communities, and they'll throw statistics at you, and it's a surreal experience. It's gotten to the point I'm tired of talking about it, because to me, it's just obvious. If you don't believe that metering conserves water, one of our most precious basic resources, then you can do it on the basis of fairness. Why should someone who uses hardly any water for their house, their home, pay the same as someone who uses an extremely large amount of water? It just, the flat rate system just isn't fair. But again, you're talking to the wall in some cases. Now, it always boggles my mind when I think about it. We are using some of the best drinking water, which has gone through expensive filtration plants and all the rest of the infrastructure. And we're using that drinking water, the best water in the world, to put on our lawns. Now, I understand that we all want these beautiful manicured lawns, but frankly, I think Councillor Steves is right. I mean, it's okay to have a lawn that is not, doesn't look like a golf green. It's just okay. And I can tell you at Metro Vancouver, the biggest expense, the biggest capital expenditures that are coming up in the future, besides there's the liquid waste treatment plants, and of course those are huge. But in fact, in the overall sense, it's the water project. Every project you've got involving water and water infrastructure is incredibly expensive. Take the water tunnel that they're putting in from the North Shore into Burnaby. Take the water filtration plant, which was $800 million a few years ago. They have arranged with BC Hydro and the other partners and the province to be able to take water from a deeper level in the Coquitlam Lake, again, which involves very expensive infrastructure. So yes, I realize that the water comes from the sky, and you can say that, well, the resource is free, but in fact, it's not free because of all the infrastructure of processing it and getting it to the end users. And we want to preserve the kind of quality water that we have, and add to that the fact that, again, I think Councillor Steves is absolutely right when he talks, and he's talked more at other times about it. Coming up in the future, we take the water for granted. And, if there's going to be, universal unrest, it's probably not going to be shortage of food, it's going to be shortage of water, which leads to a shortage of food. And, wars were fought over less than that. So from every point of view, I think that we have to take steps, imposing the water meter, or imposing the watering restrictions probably won't save us from an international war, but it is an important step that we can and we should be taking to make sure that we're not just overconfident about this precious resource. Without it, boy, we've got a big problem. And I'm going to be supporting this. So to wrap up, I'll go back to Councillor Liu, or Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to conclude that the recommended amendments to the bylaws are very important. For one, we have to align our bylaws with the Metro Vancouver Drinking Water Conservation Plan. And also, I think this would send out a very strong message to the public that we have to be careful in saving our waters. Now, I understand the argument that probably the restriction, stage 1 restriction seems to be arbitrary and seems to be automatic. And the argument that perhaps, there's no need to restrict the watering if it's not in a shortage of water. However, I would also say that if we look at it from another perspective, if it is a wet summer, why do we need to water our lawns for more than 1 day a week? So I think to have the restriction as being automatic, I don't think it would do any harm, but it will give a very strong strong message to the public that they have to conserve water. And as for the fine, to increase the fine, yeah, I understand that probably, the increase seems to be arbitrary as well. However, I also feel that there's no harm to put it there, even though we may never go up to the maximum. So with that, I will ask council to approve the recommendation.
All right, so we'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Hobbs opposed. That brings us to the public announcements. And the first one is an administrative matter. I just want to bring to the listeners' attention that the February 16th Development Permit Panel meeting is going to be canceled. It was already, the January 26th meeting was already canceled, and so this February 16th is also in the same boat. Now, coming up very quickly is the Lunar New Year. Tuesday, February 1st is Lunar New Year, marking the start of the New Year and the Spring Festival for 2022. So we take this opportunity to bring greetings of good health, success, and happiness as we celebrate the Year of the Tiger. So we hope that everybody has a new year filled with happiness, prosperity, precious moments with family and friends, and a reminder to be safe and follow public health guidelines when you're making your celebrations. February is once again going to be Black History Month in our country, and it's an opportunity to celebrate and raise awareness of the legacy of Black Canadians past and present. The Richmond Cultural Centre is hosting an art exhibition throughout February entitled Black Artists and Creators in Our Community. Working with Black Arts Vancouver and the youth-operated Black Arts Centre, the free exhibition will be featuring the works of numerous local Black artists. Richmond Public Library will also offer a variety of resources to highlight Black History Month, so if you want to get more information, go to the city website. Also upcoming on Thursday, January 27th is International Holocaust Day, and the city has once again signed a proclamation to mark this important date. By proclaiming this day, the city recognizes the need to remind current and future generations of the Holocaust and reprehensible crimes against humanity. We must all continue to work together to fight anti-Semitism and other racist behaviors while we build a community where we welcome and celebrate diversity, compassion, and inclusion as our way of life. Then we have further news as the result of the pandemic with the fitness centers and the classes which are returning. This is a reminder that the city fitness centers and classes have reopened following recent changes to the provincial health orders. Fitness centers and weight rooms are again open on a drop-in basis, as well as various other indoor activities, classes, and personal training. Group fitness classes are also back on a pre-registration basis. Proof of vaccination and the government-issued photo ID are still required for participation in most programs, including fitness, sports, swimming, and adult recreational classes. The city also reminds everyone not to enter a facility if you're feeling unwell, and that masks must be worn in all public areas, and we are encouraged while exercising. So if you're interested in finding out the schedules and the registration, go to the richmond.ca/register. And finally, we have the Branscombe House Artist in Residency launch. So we're inviting the public to meet Crystal Kieran, the 7th Annual Branscombe House Artist in Residence, at a virtual launch on Thursday, February 3rd at 7:00 p.m. Crystal is a performing artist and an educator who has performed on Broadway. She's toured internationally as a featured vocalist and appeared on stage as an actor, dancer, and choreographer. Her free community arts programs, activities, and workshops are at Branscombe House and other locations throughout this year. So if you want to register or you want to learn more about this, visit richmond.ca/Branscombe Residency. So with that, Madam Clerk, bylaws for adoption?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 3 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. And the development permit panel?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 recommendations for council. Recommendation 1, that the minutes of the development permit panel meeting held on January 12th, 2022, and the chair's report for the development permit panel meetings held on May 13th, 2020, and August 25th, 2021, be received for information. And recommendation 2, that the recommendation of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development variance permit for the property at PID 013082434 be endorsed and the permit so issued.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And thank you. We are now adjourned.